Okay, YouTubers, here's my latest take on several subjects. One, Nibiru. I'm tired of it. First and foremost, the original discoverer of this likely thing he called Planet X, I believe his name was Harrison or something like that. He noticed that Neptune and Uranus were being pulled downward in their orbits by something that was below them. That means this is something which travels crosswise to the ecliptic. Here's the ecliptic, and all our orbits are in that. And then here is the actual orbit of this thing would be, at the time he saw it, it was like under Neptune, Uranus would be coming under, and then would loop over and back out again. It would never come into the inner solar system, only parallel to it. What, if any, effects that would entail would depend on the position of other planets, such as Earth, relevant to it when it's there. I mean, if they're on the far side of their orbit, well, it's underneath the part of their orbit they're not in, and it's obviously not going to affect them. So, some amount of trouble could be expected, yeah, but nothing that extreme as they make out. Chances are, wherever it is, it might be in the vicinity of Jupiter, the asteroid belt, about now. I would think it would have caused some noticeable disturbance in the asteroid belt. Not that this is something that would necessarily be reported. I mean, how many amateurs follow the asteroid belt? It could account for the uptick in comet and meteor activity that we're seeing. But, so it's probably somewhere in that vicinity. But I'm seeing all this stuff, like it's a dwarf star, it's a big planet, it's got living people on it, the Anunnaki are coming back to enslave us, and neither could survive on something of a big enough mass planet to affect Jupiter or Uranus, Neptune or Uranus's orbits, and certainly could not survive on a star. Now, hanging out this with it as motherships in a cloud of orbit around it, yeah, I suppose. Get back to this Anunnaki thing. It got the name Nibiru because of Zechariah Sitchin weighing in on this shit. Now, what he did, according to Michael Heiser in sitchiniswrong.org, or was it .com? I think it's .org. Anyway, basically, this guy claims to have translated stuff that he never shows in any of his books. A photograph of the plate, of the tablet. He never, and his use of Sumerian, when you actually go and learn the language, or you check the words in an online dictionary, don't fit. Now, this compromises, of course, Joseph Farrell's research on cosmic war, because he bases it in part on that. But Sitchin, for example, let me just take the word Nibiru. What it means is eunuch. This is some servant that's created by one false god for a lazy false goddess. This has nothing to do with a killer planet. It also has nothing to do with the flood, because God promised he would never have such an extreme thing happen again. The inundation of all coastal regions and destruction of life thereon, which is the bulk of the population, yeah, it's possible. But a worldwide flood that destroys all life like he did before, no. That means that this cannot, even if he did use such a huge thing as a mechanism to do it, instead of just his command, then this thing is something that was brought in for that occasion by his command, taken away by his command, and will be kept away by his command. It's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like that movie 2012. Nancy Leiter with her channeled zetas that could be anything from lying spirits to her imagination, her flat-out lies, or some very strong sender-type telepath on Earth, whether alien hybrid, or human. She made a big deal about this. This thing was due back in 2006, according to them. And these people, if they're aliens out there in space, they're in a better position to know where something is and how fast it's traveling than any of our people. So they either got their heads up their ass or they're lying, which means just don't pay any attention to anything that has to do with Zeta talk, Zeta anything, Nancy Leiter, or Zechariah Sitchin. The only thing worth paying attention to is that naval astronomer, Harrison, who, oddly enough, died of galloping cancer suddenly out of the blue, with no background predisposing him to this. And just when he was working on building an astronomy observatory in New Zealand where he had a better shot at getting a picture of this thing. And I think that observatory ended up torched before it was even finished. Meanwhile, another observatory is positioned at the South Pole, which is rather odd unless you're looking for something that's coming in from below. Now, this brings us to another thing. John Moore and his Navy Sea map. There are two versions out there called the Navy Sea map or future map. One of them is nothing of the sort. It's from a totally different future map. The other one is John Moore's map, and this map is essentially identical to one that was fielded by some racial separatist white group in Louisiana. Not now, I'm doing a video, I'll call you back. And I think it was in Louisiana, with all sorts of strange markings on it indicating where would be. Some of them were supposed to be locations of FEMA camps. Some were other things they had no explanation to it. And in turn, these devices seem to have been overlaid a map which was originally presented by Ashton Petrie. Ashton Petrie was getting these, visions, impressions, or whatever. And then he thought he had a visit from the Virgin Mary. It seemed to confirm it. This is the same map that I think it's Al Bielek, or was that other guy, Moon, claimed to have been shown as on a TV screen, supposedly a TV show coming out of the future, when he's supposedly at Montauk. Well, it looks to me like for whatever reason, either Ashton Petrie is getting some input telepathically from some people who also were producing this screw with your head thing on Bielek or whoever it was that saw this. Or they used Ashton Petrie's map, and I think it's probably more likely the latter in terms of timing. I have another video out there in my channel that has that detail. And right now I can't remember, but you go to that one and you'll see which proceeds first. Okay, which precedes which. Now, the Ashton Petrie map actually has some parallels to some possibilities. Most of these maps agree on the United States being ripped in half along the Mississippi River channel. This would increase by about 50 miles wide. The Petrie map has Wisconsin like gone, and they see the Great Lakes pour into the Gulf of Mexico. The New Madrid Fault, of course, is a distinct possibility as being capable of creating some really horrific disruptions. Whether it would do that, indeed whether the break would even be along the Mississippi or only involve the lower part of it, is a big question in my mind. I just thought of that angle. So if you're going to have a nasty rip open up, I would think it would be the New Madrid Fault and the Ramapo Fault farther up northeast that connects to it. Not straight along, the Mississippi River itself. Just probably the southern part would be engaged in the central southern. Now, there is an interesting video, or not, well, I think it has been done up in video form, but this page out there, which discusses the possibility that air being sucked down because of fracking, because they pump this fracking mix in to force the gas out, but then they pump regular water in to fill the space that the gas has been displaced out of. But that water is going to sink below into the aquifers, also taking the contaminated fracking fluid with it, and still leave a gap with still some gas in there, some methane. And the vent tubes to the surface that have to do with the hydraulics of that, of aerial, like gas hydraulics, shall we say, air pressure control and stuff like that, are going to be sucking oxygen down into it. And there have been explosions. A couple of houses blew up because of something to do with this. That had to do with the fracking. And so they're thinking theoretically that this huge gas reserve the United States and parts of Mexico sit on could eventually combine with enough oxygen to enough percentage to become explosive. And something could set it off, and you'd have some massive explosion and constant burn going on under the surface, and probably break the surface in many places, and igniting the shale oil in the Rockies. Somehow I think this is a little bit unlikely. Not totally unlikely, but I think it'd be more... I mean, if you take the house that blew up, a couple of houses have seen it blow up. Okay, why didn't this continue underground and start this cataclysm down there? I think it'd probably be more segmented, kind of. But, again, there was a vision that a guy named Bill Larkin had, which does make sense. A huge 50, 80-foot tsunami hitting the East Coast, having to do with something happening out in the Atlantic Ocean, an island. There's the Canaries. Exactly that would happen if Cambridge collapses, finishes the collapse that started in 1700. And California being ripped loose from Nevada and water pouring in various places. Okay, you got the Long Valley caldera acting up. And it's a fault that runs, they just discovered, that runs along this line. And they figure, oh, it's going to be millions of years, and they'll do this. Oh, well, maybe millions of years aren't the issue. Maybe it's something more like tens or hundreds. The word he got was the month of August, the last 2 weeks, or something around the 27th to the end, or the 17th to the end, I forget which. It's a danger zone, but the year was not given. Okay, so much for all this for now, and I'm probably going to totally overhaul my channel.